The following Conscious Consumer Network recording of a live broadcast is available to purchase in high definition at ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a CCN pledger. For €10 a month, you can have unlimited access to CCN high definition downloads at ethymarket.com. Ethymarket, the ethical marketplace for conscious consumers.
Hello and welcome to the One People Show. Welcome to the One People Show for this week. I've got Dee over there losing her voice.
It's all good. No, it's all good. Sure.
We do hope to be joined by Randy Morgans and Duncan O'Finnian at some point during today's show. Everything's getting slammed right now. The CCN network, the stream is being slammed. My internet's being slammed. Dee personally seems to be getting slammed. So fingers crossed, everyone, that this goes according to some kind of plan. Thank you for joining us all. Hello to everybody in the chat room.
Hi, chat room.
So, it sounds like the tagline for this show should be the One People Show. It's been a hell of a fucking week.
It's been a hell of a fucking week.
Because I'm sick of saying it every day, every week. But you've been following CERN as per usual.
I'm telling you, CERN is doing shit the likes of which I've never seen before. And all the people who are following right now are like, they hit 14 TeV yesterday, which is the highest power ever, except they hit 14 TeV yesterday. And okay, TeV is an energy level. They have been running, so yeah, kind of. You're frozen. Oh, no, there you go. So back in December 21st, 2012, when they blew up CERN last time, they were only running at about 8 TeV, which is a TeV is a tera electron volts. It's a physics thing. Don't ask me to explain it. Since they fired up, they started down at around that 6 to 8 in April. They've gone up. They started by May. They were hitting 13.5 and 13 TeV. And I've got Nick standing opposite me, trying to feed me all the physics words to describe this. Now he's like, no, I'm not going to say anything. So they've been running at 13 TeV. Now we knew come September, the plan was they were going to jump it to 14 TeV. They were going to expand the power. So this is the highest power it's ever run at. Not only that, though, it's not just, one would say 1 TeV volt more. You know, okay, what is that worth? They are expanding. Instead of like small little proton bunches, they are now sending massive amounts of protons into collision. BP Earthwatch did a video on Thursday. I caught a couple of screenshots. Unfortunately, I didn't get the beam done. No, I put out all the information on removing the shackles that day because the sun was doing weird fucking shit. We were in a geomagnetic storm and had been like this. Oh, geomagnetic storm for 4 days solid, just going up and down. But he caught a screenshot of the dump. Now, the dump is when they dump the beam. It's basically, it's like an abort thing, right? They drop the beams down. And you will get, if you're lucky to be watching live at just the right time, you can see what the picture they're looking at. And I've got the pictures that I've isolated out of the video that BP Earthwatch did. And I've never seen anything like this before. And even BP Earthwatch was like, is that a parallel universe they just fucking opened a wormhole to? Because right smack in the middle of it, there are several holes in the beam dump. Very, very trippy.
Didn't they say not long ago that they had a problem, they had an issue, and that they weren't going to be able to redo it all until later in the year, maybe December or something?
Yes. That was the big announcement they made around mid-August, that they were having issues. And those dates that they'd said they were going to do this stuff in September was now going to be pushed ahead till, like, it was going to be like December before they'd be able to do it. Yeah, well, guess what? They fucking lied. Because the shit they're doing right now is nuts. So I've been watching really, really closely for the last year. Like, I'm checking the live feed like 5, 6, 10 times a day. Yesterday, they hit 14 TeV. And I got screenshots. And you've got various screens that you can go in and look at that show you different time segments. So you've got one on the dashboard which shows about a 24-hour segment of all what's going on with the energy levels and the beams. But they've got one on the certain experiment page which shows you a much shorter time span, but it's far more detailed. And on that one, you can see that both beams rocket off the chart, completely off the chart, and only one beam came down. And it was immediately an emergency beam dump. And they were well 14 TeV. At the exact same time, everyone I was speaking to was literally getting slammed. Like, it was like the whole world was like, and again today. New stuff.
Can I ask a question? A completely uneducated, ignorant, I know nothing about any of this question. When you say dumped, does that mean that the energy that they've generated has been discharged somewhere on the planet or into the planet, or what?
The beams, the proton beams are being dumped, not the energy level necessarily, because that's measured in a separate wave. So they dump the beams. So basically, I wish I had a pen. Do I have a pen and a paper somewhere? If you can imagine, so everyone's seen the picture of CERN as the great big circle. Well, there are circles within the circles into levels. So basically the beams, when they fire up the beams, it's kind of like it goes a little one, and then a bigger one, and then a bigger one, and then into the big Alice, right? This is the big one. When they dump, they've got special spots all the way around, which are like emergency dump spots where they can just basically dump the beams. Garbage dumps, I guess you would call them. But when they do trigger, now there's obviously, they set it off, they let it run. Sometimes they'll put an injection in and it'll run for a few hours, a couple hours. Sometimes it'll only run for like 25 minutes and they dump it because, I don't know, they didn't get the readings they want, it wasn't lined up the way they wanted, etc. Right now, they've been running at continuous high power. Both beams and the power output or input, I guess, non-stop for about 7 hours with hardly a flicker straight across the board. And they've been running between 6 and 7 TeV. Sorry, between per beam, which works out to 13 to 14 TeV in total.
My question relates to how people are affected by it, because there does seem to be a connection between the way people feel physically, mentally, and activity with CERN. So are people responding to these dump periods, or are they responding to the spikes in the readings? Do you know which?
I have looked at it over and over again. It depends, because there's a lot. We can look at it and we can talk about the energy, and we can talk about the beams, and we can talk about the what they're doing. But there's more to it than that. So here, I'll tell you what. Hold on. Give me a quick second. Yes. Oh, hold on. Nick's gonna give me a little bit here. What?
Seriously, it's a big electromagnet. Every time there's, and we are electromagnets, every time they start it, they create an electrical current in the field, and then we're responsible to that. And when they dump it, it's like that electromagnetic feedback that collapses back into the circuit.
Yeah.
Same thing when you dump it.
Yeah. So did you hear what Nick said?
No, and if you're going to do that, just get him to sit next to you and tell us directly.
Come here, Nick. Come here. Come here. Come on. He's coming. We're interfering with his workout now, you know.
I'm very sorry.
I'm sorry, but you're going to interrupt the
And after your question, Leisha, I would have to say it's both. Like we were just looking at the Bedini circuit, and that takes advantage of electromagnetic feedback that occurs in a circuit when you turn it off. Basically, when you turn the electricity off, the power in the coil, which has a magnetic field, makes it collapses the magnetic field and it causes an energetic spike back through the circuit. People are all magnets in a certain way, and we're all attached to that magnetic field. So when they start up the experiment and they're running it, we're receptive to that. It interferes with the magnetic field of the planet. That's documented and shown.
Yeah.
And then when they shut it off, when they dump the beams, I would have to say, like with that Bedini circuit, it also affects us as well, since we're attached to the magnetic field.
Well, you know what it reminds me of? You know that I think they do it all over the world, but we have these nights once a year here in Australia where everyone supposedly doesn't use their electricity.
Yes.
You know, yeah. But the power companies don't switch off. They're still generating electricity. So what ends up happening is that there's an abundance of it sitting at the power station, basically. And they have to dump it. When everyone stops using, they have to dump this abundance of electricity they've been generating. And they dump it in.
Yeah,
and I've heard so many stories from people who live near power stations who say it's horrendous on that night. There's a build-up, and then you can feel the excess electricity getting discharged into the earth. So the whole thing's a farce in terms of us doing any.
No, it does no good.
So it's reminding me of that when you say the word dumping or discharging or whatever, this energy that they've created. That's what I think of. And then what is the effect on the planet itself and all life on it if what we're doing is experiencing this burst of excess electromagnetic energy?
I mean, Dave Murphy talked about it when he came here, and I'm going to use the Bedini coils again. He built the 10-coil version of that Bedini device, and he was telling us a story about how in the room. He built the 10-coil Bedini device using that example again, and in the room that he built it, when he switched it on, all of the plants started to grow like crazy, and they ran it continuously for like 30 days. And when he was telling us about it, he was saying that for the 30 days that he had that device running, the plants grew like mad. An African violet that almost was struggling for life before they started went bananas. And when they had to dismantle it and move it, every single thing in the room died. So there is an effect when it's on, and there's an effect when it's off.
When they turned it off, every plant in the room, that African violet died. Like within days, boom, dead, unrevivable. So, I mean, we've seen it. We've seen the proof that what CERN is doing is affecting the geomagnetics of the planet. We've seen it where I've shown the spikes in the magnetopause, which shows you the planet and the magnetic field, if you will. And you'll see that it coincides. CERN is running at certain times, doing certain things. Sorry, guys. This is what happens when you have a giggle fit just before you go live. And all of a sudden, you'll see this nice, smooth magnetopause go, or like this, or like this. And that's the planet. Well, we live on the planet. So we know that when the sun sends, when there's geomagnetic storms on the planet, because of solar storms, for example, all week we've had solar storms. We've been geomagnetic storms since September 7th. They affect us. It is a proven fact. Incidences of road rage go through the roof during a geomagnetic storm. Incidents, homicides, suicides, etc. They go up during these things because we are on a planet. We also have our own magnetic field, our own electrical field, which is directly in contact with the planetary, and if you want to look at it, at the sun's field. So anything that fucks with that is going to fuck with us as well. And this week has been like serious fuckery. I'm sorry. It's not, like I say, it's not even location wise, because I've spoken to people all over the planet who have just been like, calling me on Skype and sending me messages and going, what the fuck is going on? What the fuck is going on? So, yeah.
Now, last week we mentioned how everybody's been sending us all their info, which is awesome. But you and I have probably received the Cameron, whatever his name is, interview with Kerry Camelot a dozen times.
Kerry Camelot.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, Kerry Camelot. I finally got around to listening to the second interview yesterday. I haven't seen the first one yet. Found him difficult to, like, he was hard work for me to follow. But he did say some things that I did kind of, well, I took them as confirmations, I guess, because, you know, you always love it when someone else says the same thing you sort of believe, which was he's talking about the sun. And because you and I have held the belief for a long time that the sun's a portal. Most people know I've practiced sun gazing on and off for I don't know how many years. And I feel it is, I don't know, hugely important to what is happening. Now, you haven't heard it yet. And for anybody who hasn't heard it yet, I'll just briefly recap, and Jeff can tell me if I missed anything or to say it wrong. He said the sun is a portal. It's a two-way communication system, that when we pray or send intent via the sun or to the sun, it acts like a portal in the sense that our message goes via the sun and out to the rest of creation and can be heard. And then it's also the way information can come in and we can receive. He said that all the reasons for chemtrails that people have put forward are all valid. But another one is to block our energy, our intent, our prayers from getting to the sun and being heard beyond it. And that if I had understood him correctly, he said, I think he said it was an unintended side effect, was that the planet itself, the consciousness of the planet itself, couldn't communicate with the sun. And she kind of lost her bearings as a result. It was almost like her GPS system got interfered with. And she's been a little bit wobbly ever since, or over the last few years particularly. And they've had to stop the chemtrails, and which we've all noticed. You know, I haven't seen a chemtrail around here for months. And yesterday, while I was listening to this thing, is first day I noticed one, and when I actually had a good look at the sky, that was all chemtrail cover. Mm-hmm. He said that he actually said they won't stop completely because they still need to maintain it for the reasons, the other reasons that they've put them up, but they had to back off because of this disruption in the communication between the Earth and the sun. Did I have that right, Jeff? You can correct me if I have it wrong. Yep. Okay.
Lisa did her homework. Danny didn't.
For anybody who listens to the Collective Imagination show too, I think I'd like to try and incorporate this aspect of it, you know, and bring the sun into these our weekly doings, intents, because it does feel like it's an important part. But it certainly was listening to the interview. I mean, there's bits in there where I went, but you'd love it because he does talk about all the factions.
Yeah.
He explains all the factions. But what he doesn't seem to include in the overall scheme of things, to my liking at least, is the consciousness of the planet itself and the collective of humanity. There was, in a way, this overall kind of message that I got from it, which was, we don't have any in this. It's up to all of these factions to play out this game amongst themselves, that this energy, these beings, this whatever that is overseeing and monitoring the planet and keeping an eye on things, is going to let it all play out, and that we're just pawns in this game.
Yeah, I do not consent.
Yeah,
No.
me either.
No.
They didn't. There was no mention of the consciousness of the planet that I caught anyway, or ours, or, I mean, he apparently, in whatever document he gave Kerry to share, he is teaching people how to pray, and I'm assuming that has something to do with the sun. But there was none of this. It was like, where do we fit into all of this, and where's our intent, and the planets? I mean.
So I'm going to make this comment on sight unseen. I haven't heard it. I haven't listened to it. All I've heard is what Lisa's told me about it and what Jeff and a few other people have told me about it. But every single time I read something that is whether it's an article, a message, whatever, that talks about how much power these guys have, and you're just a pawn. Basically, you can't do diddly fucking shit. I'm sorry. Yeah, not buying it.
Yeah, the other impact. Oh, sorry. The other influence.
It's a disinfo.
The other influence in all of this was Planet X, and what he referred to as the good news. I mean, he's talking about, the first part of the interview is him talking about all the factions and how they're going to play out their mindsets and blah blah blah. And then he refers to that in hindsight as the good news. You know, now the bad news, and the bad news was Planet X and its effect on the planet. I didn't see what he was referring to as the good news as the good news at all. No. I'm sorry, I'm just having little quick looks at the.
No, I just immediately, for me, when I hear this stuff, it's like, you know, you and I have had multiple conversations about different things that have come up, different people that we've spoken to, where you have this information comes out, and it's, when you look at it, it's disempowering, and it's very, to my mind, deliberately disempowering. And how do you get people to listen? Is it's got to be 80% truth at least and 20% lies, because you have to have the truth in there to pull the people in, and yet you put the subtle messages in that are very disempowering, which are very you're a pawn. They're going to do this thing and you're just going to be there and you're just along for the ride and you have no power and you have no. And as soon as I hear that, immediately my alarm bells go off and go, no, this is disinformation. That's just me. And like I said, haven't listened to it even a bit. So take that for what it's worth.
Well,
and we all know that I'm extremely judgmental. So
that was what I took away from it. Was like there was no mention of us as anything other than big players in this game, and I don't buy that. Not because I think, I mean, all life on this planet, in all its forms, matters, and it has a say, I think.
Okay, I'm going to throw something out because we talked about this a little bit. You actually brought this up last week, and I've been going over it in my head again, and I'm going to bring it forward from the way I've always spoken about it. I'm not going to even remotely try and paraphrase what you said last week. So when we talk about beings being creative beings, and we talked about creative beings, like that we are creators, right? That is what we do. That is what we are capable, which is a really important word. We are capable of. And the theory that I've had very, very strongly lately, that could be kind of maybe what Cameron's talking about. If you look at it from the whole matrix analogy. And I've said, the people who are plugged into the matrix, they're not capable of creating. Or at least, let's say if you talk about, because we're talking CERN and that, we're talking about, numbers and percentages, etc. It's kind of like the people who are plugged into the matrix, completely plugged into the matrix, maybe they're at like 1% power or less than 1% power of what they can create. And I think that this is one of the problems that we've seen, is they keep trying to spin to, we've talked about so many times, but get the people to write them into the next cycle. But they're discovering that it doesn't matter how much they try and get the people who are actually plugged into the matrix. If you feed the people lies, it's not going to be created because it's fraud. And that, I have no better way of explaining it than that. If you are trying to get someone to trick someone into creating something that you want, into following your agenda, it's fraud. Therefore, it ain't going to happen. It's like sorry, you're bust out of luck. And I think that maybe that could be what Cameron's talking about, as in the vast majority of the people who are still plugged into the matrix type idea. And guys, you know that I use that as a metaphor, right? I'm not necessarily meaning that they're plugged into the matrix in a little pod, things coming out of their backs. Just saying. But there's people who are completely immersed in that dumbed down society that watches your NFL football every week, votes for Obama or Bush or whoever, and thinks that this is normal life and buys into it all. Those are the people that I call who are like plugged into the matrix. They don't see outside of that make-believe world that needs to be telling them. But because everything they're being told is bullshit and lies, and any contracts, if you will, have been signed based on lies and fraud, that they can't create. That's what I think, is that they can't create. Now, that may be what Cameron's talking about then, is that the vast majority of the public. Yes. Shoot.
So just to clarify, though, because I think there might be one or two confused people in the chat room. You're not saying that these individuals are not capable of creating, but
no.
create based on fraud.
Because
exactly,
it is based what they are trying. So, for example, if you're a Catholic and you're a good little Catholic, and the Vatican is really trying to push the whole hellfire and heaven and St. Peter and the pearly gates and that, they brainwash those people into believing that, into perpetuating, into creating that reality. Well, it's fraudulent. It's a lie. Therefore, it will not be created. And that's what I mean by, it's not that they are incapable of, it's the fact that they're being fed the data, they're being fed and mind controlled into perpetuating to try and create something that isn't. And you can't, as far as I'm concerned, and it just, for the last couple of months, this is pounded home to me over and over again. You cannot create what isn't. And all these systems and cycles. What was that?
I think Jeff created a new word, bullshittery.
Bullshittery. I like it.
I do not consent to the bullshittery. I will not co-create the bullshittery.
I will not co-create the bullshittery. And it's okay, because even those who don't know that it's bullshittery, they're not going to co-create it either, because they can't, because it's based on fraud. Any contract based on fraud, and this comes back to those conversations that we've had about astral contracts, soul contracts, all of this bullshit do not exist except the power that you give them. If you believe they exist, then they will have power over you. But if you know here that you didn't sign that contract, and if you know here there's no fucking way in hell you would have ever knowingly, in full transparency, signed that contract, then that's a contract. It's like, it's gone instantaneously. It's based on fraud. Anything based on fraud doesn't exist. And I don't care if it's an astral contract, a soul contract, if it's one that you signed 10,000 years ago on the top of a pyramid. Yeah, it doesn't hold water anymore, because the moment you recognize the fact that, hey, wait a second, I don't consent, it's gone instantly.
Great. And Lily's just made a comment in the chat room too about why we're seeing all these predictions coming out again. Oh, I think I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you.
And if we go down to the whole, inside the matrix, outside the matrix, two timeline analogy thing.
Yeah.
What they're throwing at us in the form of these is the old one, or the weaker one, or the matrix timeline. And they're hoping that enough people will buy into it and feel into it in order to bring it in. But it's not going to work because it's based on fraud.
Because it's based on fraud.
And then there's enough of it just playing differently, playing a different game.
And I'm going to put this out there because it's happening again. And there seems to come in the waves, kind of like waves, where people come out of the woodwork and try and convince you stuff from people you haven't been in contact for a while. People come out of the woodwork to try and convince you of something. I got 2 emails today from people I've not heard in a long, long time. And I looked at them and I was like, oh, I had a very long conference call this morning about some pretty heavy shit. And then I open my email and find emails from these people and go, that's interesting timing, because I don't believe in coincidence. And messages of exactly one of the things that I'd been telling this friend of ours, Lisa was on the call with me for most of it anyway, an energetic doing, whether we want to call it astral or visual or meditative, whatever you want to call it, something that I worked on 2 years ago. And I open up my email after I've just given her, this friend of ours, all the data of everything that had happened, plus the play out of what we've seen play out over the last 6 weeks. And someone sends me an email and says, oh, do you know that so-and-so is talking about this and that and they mentioned you? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Really? Really? And it's the pull. Because
when was the post?
I don't know. I haven't even gone to look it up. I just read the email. I haven't gone to look it up. Say again?
I was wondering whether it was before or after your conversation.
I don't know. The email came was after, like it was the very first email I opened when I went into my email, which I'm really sorry everyone, it was really, really bad. I haven't opened my emails in like 7 days, so I'm about 100 emails behind. I am working my way through it though. I promise I am. It's been a fuck of a week. But this is why I think, and everyone I'm talking to is going through the same experience of people coming out of the woodwork and like going, oh no, you got to come over here, come and do this over here. No, you got to get involved with this. You've got to get involved with that. And I think it's because they figured out that the people who are plugged into the matrix, the people who are working under fraud, because they don't know it, they don't know any better, and they've been coerced into it, can't create. So now they need to try and get the people who are unplugged, so to speak, who are awake, who are aware, and convince them to create it. And that's what I've been watching for the last 6 months, especially. It just keeps, it's like, wow. And it just keeps coming in waves where they come out of the woodwork, and it's like people trying to drag you in. And it's like, wow, it's kind of funny, actually.
The other thing that I listened to yesterday, which is another one that you and I have both been directed to watch or listen to a lot, was Anand. Is it Anand Bosnan? Something like that. Anand Bosman, one of those, with Veritas, with Mel Fabregas. Now, I listened to them both yesterday. My initial response was, okay, they're coming from two different places. But then when I really thought about it, I was like, no, they're just coming at it from two different levels. You know, Cameron was more dealing with the 3D and how this is families and actions and how that's all going to play out. And Anand was coming from, my God, if I thought Cameron was hard to listen to, Anand was, it was all quantum physics speak, and the guy doesn't take a breath. I think Mel said 6 words the whole 3 hours. He's incredible. He's incredible. Like, he absolutely knows what he's talking about. Unfortunately, he's not very good at expressing it in ways that laymen can understand.
Which is a big problem. You start talking about quantum physics and you start talking about CERN. You end up with a place like language.
Well, he said, it's funny because I think Mel's not wanting to say outright one way or the other, but he asked the question of, is it really a globe? And he said no. By the way.
Interesting.
But it's a hologram. He said it's absolutely a hologram. And he referred to people who are on the planet in body. And I think, Jeff, we'll have to yay or nay this, that have been alive for a very, very long time, potentially in the thousands of years, who are monitoring this game.
Which is something we've talked about on and off for a long time too.
Yep. And they have nothing, there are no accidents by the sounds of things. He said he's actually met one of these people, spent time with them, seen documents, seen what their tools, the tools of their trade. And one of them is a map that overlaid on a physical map of the Earth, matches completely, but it's thousands of years old, or it's not even of this planet, I'm not sure about that. And the names of everything completely match up. There's even towns and cities that were named only a couple of 100 years ago match up to this thing. And it's as if everything down to the finest detail, including our personal names, it's already been written. It all sounded so predestined that we are literally living out a script. And that when we're born, the name that we're supposed to have is put into our thoughts, into our consciousness. So that there's nothing off script.
Well, I don't know, because they definitely fucked up with my name because I don't use my first name. I tried to change my first name when I was 7 the first time. Because I was like, that's not my name. It's just not my name. It really isn't. So I don't know. And my second name is Danielle. I've used Danielle as, basically my secondary option legally. And even Danielle is kind of, no, Danny, And D, most often. I even refer to myself as D now because it's just, that's my name.
Well, apparently you picked up on it, but maybe your mum and dad didn't.
Yeah, apparently they screwed up.
They didn't get the memo.
They didn't get the memo. Or, I mean, the one thing I've always joked about is the fact of the whole changing of the legal name when you start going into your straw man, your corporate name, your bond name. There's an interesting, should have Gary David on to talk about that, the bond name. That it was almost like a, I knew instinctively about all of that of like, no, don't associate yourself with that name. Don't associate yourself with that name. I've been talking about the fact that I was going to change my legal name to Danny. That's it. For 25 years. That was well before I understood anything about legalities or anything. I was like, I don't need a last name. What do I need a last name for? Okay, I'm just Danny.
Jeff, maybe you can answer this question because you just put a comment in. This map that he refers to, based on the terminology that we all kind of understand amongst this group, is it matrix timeline? It's the game, or is it the bigger plan?
What's kind of is a little sidetrack on that. What's kind of interesting? My wonderful friend who sent me a hard drive full of movies and TV shows. My kids just started watching Star Trek Next Generation, which they've never seen. And we're on like season 1, episode 4 or something. And they introduced the holodeck, and they're explaining the holodeck to some visiting dignitaries. And it's because they're explaining, they're saying, well, it's only hologram, it's not real. And they're saying, oh, no. If someone hits you, even if the hologram hits you, it's real. Like the hologram can knock you the fuck out. Picard didn't quite say it like that, but and they tested, and these visiting dignitaries on the ship were like, but how can it be a hologram if I can touch it, if it's real? And I had this thought moment of like, oh yeah, how can it be a hologram if you can touch it and it's real? Geez, sound like a little other bit of truth that we're kind of looking at right now.
Yeah.
Just a bit.
There's a comment from Willie in the chat room, is that one thing that he confirmed for me that was huge for me personally is the fact that on Earth's timeline, we are actually folding past and future into the present moment. Loved his explanation of that fact. Okay, I think my head's going to do backflips. And also, apparently, Cameron's first interview said that time is created backwards.
Well, that's kind of interesting too. Sorry, I'm just looking at the CERN dashboard. Sorry, guys. Funnily enough, one of those messages that you and I got, I guess it was last week, and it was talking about different things in England and Wales, et cetera, and it somehow just triggered something. It was like a name, and I went off, and this thing was like blah, 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 blah. Well, that's the whole Arthur legend, King Arthur legend. And Nick and I started going, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. Well, if you look at it from this and this and this, and the one thing about, if you look at a lot of the Merlin legends about Merlin the magician, is he lives time backwards. And that's how he knew how to place Arthur in all the places, and how everything was going to turn out, and how to run the battles, etc., and train Arthur, was because he lives time backwards. So he's already been there. He's already seen how it ends. Interesting.
Okay, so if you write a play, assuming all the world's a stage, right?
All the world's a stage. A holographic one. Sorry.
All the holographic stage. I don't think my head's capable of grasping that right now. because you're not going to play you're not going to act out the play. Oh, okay, yes, you are.
Yeah. You know what? Here, listen.
You
I
are.
wrote.
All right, go. Sorry.
I wrote something. It was one of those moments I talk about that when I have the urge to write something and it just kind of comes out and I have to write it and there's no stopping me and nothing gets done until it gets fucking written. And I wrote this probably 2.5 years ago, at least. It was like March or April of 2013, and it was basically about the actors on the stage and basically the grand play. And it's so funny because I've gone back now and I've read that twice. I read it once about 1.5 years ago, and then I went back and I read it again, I don't know, I guess about 4 or 5 months ago. And it was like, wow. Because at the time I really didn't know what I was writing. It was just something that kind of came to me. And now with the more stuff that's kind of we've been talking about, it's like it seems so much more relevant now than it actually did back then. And the basic premise is that basically we, the collective we, decided to hold kind of like an experiment, but kind of like a play. But the trick was that all the actors on the stage were blindfolded. They were given no lines. They would just had to kind of go along with the cues, like the musical cues and what they got from just basically bumping into each other. And then the directors were outside the play directing the actors. But what the directors didn't know is that they were actually part of the experiment too. So they weren't really given the real script either. And about how basically the directors, they start kind of dividing everyone off into segments and trying to keep people separate. But the people gravitate back together again. And it's the whole thing of like the directors start getting pissed off because no matter what they try to do, changing the music, changing everything else, they can't keep the people separated. They just still keep coming together because as you reached out, even if you had the blindfold on, you couldn't hear anything at all. You could reach out and grab someone's hand. And then each person just reaches out and grabs onto the next person. It doesn't matter what group they're in. It doesn't matter what faction or et cetera they're in. They all come together. And it basically, that's the experiment of everyone coming back together, regardless of all this external shit that's going on. It's kind of funny because I was just like, I didn't really know what I was writing at the time, but I kind of get it now.
You just reminded me as well, in January of 2014 from Morocco, I did a video about the experiment. And at the time, I referred to the general operations director.
I don't know if that's me.
Otherwise known as God, who was said her. Can you hear me?
Okay. Kind of. You're cracking up, but I don't know if it's me or if it's you.
In this analogy, I was talking about the experiment within the experiment. And I had the person running the experiment was the general operations director. Everyone called her God for short.
General operations director.
And I called it a her on purpose as it was a little bit of a finger to the likes of Al Farah, who's all very much the father, Yeah. So now there were some people who assumed I was talking about Heather in that. And I was referring to her and it was like, oh my God, really? But that wasn't in my thoughts at all. So for anybody who may still be lingering with that thought, no, that wasn't what I was doing. But there was an experiment within the experiment, and the same deal that those who were given the roles as the lead scientists to run the experiment didn't understand that they in fact were the greater
part
experiment.
of the experiment.
The actual experiment. Kind of like You know that one where they gave people, they just took ordinary people and put them in a prison and made some of them guards and some of them prisoners.
Yeah.
And what that did to them as people, and how those who were given the role of the guard and the authority and the power over others just acted atrociously. Well, it was kind of in that vein, I guess. And I'm sorry, guys, it is my connection. I don't know why. I've tried 3 different choices of internet, and they're all mucking up.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I keep getting distracted by the chat room.
Finish talking. Finish talking. Don't look at your screen.
They're distracted. But experiments within experiments, I mean, and time backwards, where I was going before was, you know, how supposedly creation's taking its in-breath, right? So I just had this vision of the whole thing just going backwards. The whole storyline playing out backwards as we're taking the in-breath.
The exhale, blow it all back out.
So that we can blow it all back out, yeah. I'm going to have to turn my camera off and disappear for a second.
Okay, you disappeared for a second. Yeah, it's interesting how these things just keep coming back around to stuff. While I've got the floor, I'm going to take you on a little journey. You know, it's all going to be trouble when Danny says that. I'm going to show everyone. Do we have time? Yeah, that's still at live. Let me see if I can just pull this up here. I was going to bring everyone over to see what is actually going on with CERN. But I don't know. I'm not being able to pull up the page that I wanted to pull up. So let me just see something here. And I don't know. I'm hoping that Randy or Duncan can join us. The last message I got from Duncan was this afternoon, basically him looking for internet because he wanted to be on. And Randy Morgan said he would try and join us for the second hour of the show, which is around now. So we'll jump in.
We also can take callers if we would like to.
Yeah, there you go.
So let's give Biggie a minute to get the call details up on the screen and see if we can handle it, because God knows we haven't
never tried this before.
Sure.
Really, this way. We can see how it goes. Yeah. So I want to touch on kind of again what we were talking about earlier, because it has been a really fucked up week. Like, seriously fucked up week. And the world's gone to hell in a handbasket in the last week as well, in case people.
Oh yeah, what's with the border closures, militarization? What's going on there?
It's kind of crazy. And I did a big report on Conspicuous News Sunday night, and I talked about the refugee situation and the distractions that are being used and some of the agendas playing out. Well, one of the agendas is making itself very, very clear right now. We have Germany has just closed off its border to Austria. Serbia has closed off one of its borders. Czechoslovakia has closed off one of its borders. There is a whole pile of people who are not only going to full-on border control, but militarizing their borders under the guise of increased security. Basically, the whole Schengen thing is falling to pieces. Anyone in Europe right now, I mean, that was kind of talked about on Sunday. It's one of the big sales pushes to get people to vote in their countries to join the EU was the idea of the Schengen state treaty, so that basically you could travel if you're a European, you could in the EU, you can live and travel anywhere within the EU, and you basically there aren't even border controls in Europe anymore when you're going like between Italy and France and places like that. You just freaking drive down the road. Oh, look, we're in France now. That could very much be coming to an end all of a sudden, under the excuse of the refugee situation. You know, I talked about on Sunday, I said, there's been an extreme flood. If you've watched this, there's been an extreme flood of refugees all of a sudden going into Europe. There's been the trickles, there's been the continuous, but now all of a sudden there is a massive flood. And I hypothesized that Turkey basically turned around and were like, yeah, here you go, guys. Off you go into Europe. Have fun. Yeah, on you go. Because Erdogan is like that. I'm not going to call him an ass shot, but I will. Like the rest of them in the NATO nations. But it's not just, this is the thing. It's not just Europe. Mexico just closed off one of its southern borders. Venezuela 3 weeks ago closed off its border with Colombia. Closed it. Thailand has just closed its border to Cambodia for people doing visa runs. All of a sudden, countries are militarizing their borders and closing them down with limited access. Now, the excuse in Europe is the refugees. But what's going on everywhere else? Now, Mexico's saying the same thing. Oh, it's the refugees, their own refugees, i.e. Central American people who are trying to escape from Guatemala, etc., coming up to Mexico. Venezuela, they've closed the border to stop drug trade between Colombia and Venezuela. I have no idea what Thailand's excuse is. I haven't had a chance to look that one up. But this is a major piece playing out right now. The closing down of these borders, and there's going to be a push to martial law in Europe, especially in Europe. They're going to make a push. They're going to keep pushing this agenda to go back to the closed borders and militarizing them again. That's what it looks like. And this has all happened like in the last week.
We just had a change of puppet guard here in Australia overnight.
Yeah.
With Abbott being outed and replaced by Campbell. Now, I mean, I guess it just got to the point where Abbott was just too embarrassing. I mean, the guy is such a. Did you see the clip of him recently? He was called on the economic situation when the reporter said to him, at the time you took over, the deficit was this. And your platform was taking control and improving the situation economically. And the deficit is now blown out to this under your leadership. What do you say to that? And his response was, I don't accept that. The boats have stopped. This guy hasn't been on a loop about stopping the refugee boats, right? That's all. That's his. And most Australians don't even agree with it. And yet, that was his response to an economic question. But the boats have stopped.
Well, I'm hoping that something similar just might happen in Canada, except that we have an election coming up. In Canada, there's an election next month. So
he's the third or fourth leader we've had since 2013.
I know you guys are running through leaders really quick.
Revolving door there in Canberra.
I'll tell you what. Can I send you Harper? I'll send you Harper. And what was the hold on? There's a message here. Last night, Danny said she was going to. Oh, sorry. Yes, Jim. I'm really, really sorry. I had a fucked up day today. As you notice, I don't think I even posted anything on Facebook today. I will get that 9/11 history list up for sure. I will get that up so everyone can see that. It was an interesting piece of history, learning about the history of September 11th, down through the last 1,000 years.
Oh, the date specifically, yeah.
Oh yeah, some interesting shit. Did you know that on September 11th, 1941 is the day that they broke ground to build the Pentagon? And 60 years later to the day they blew it up? Interesting, huh? No, there's no, it's ridiculous, just coincidence.
But I think there was also a connection to September 11 in regards to the Twin Towers as well, on a different date, different year.
Well, I mean, you'll have to see the list. I mean, there's all kinds of things. It's also the day in history when Hudson discovered the island of Manhattan in like 1605. September 11th was the day that he discovered the island of Manhattan. Because, you know, again, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's also the same day.
But it makes you wonder whether.
Well, it's the same day it was September 11th, 1999, that George H.W., I believe it was 99, George H.W. Bush gave the New World Order speech to Congress. September 11th.
But we didn't see anything really go down this September 11th, did we?
Well, excuse me, Saudi Arabia? Did you not hear about that?
No, what happened?
Yeah, a ginormous crane over Mecca fell and killed 107 people during high prayer on September 11th. Okay, here's the big one. You ready for this? What's the construction company that owns what's the name of the construction company that owns the crane? Saudi bin Laden Construction Company. Because I can't make this shit up. Seriously, I can't make this shit up. So a crane falls on the Grand Mosque during high prayer on September 11th in Mecca, kills 107 people, and the crane was owned by a company called Saudi bin Laden.
I feel like there's a punchline that has to be a joke.
It's not. It's not. Except that, you know, the king wasn't there. King Solomon's not there. He wasn't there. Because I know where he is. And it's not in Saudi Arabia.
Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Still.
How did I miss? Well, I know how I missed that. I've barely been online doing that kind of research lately.
Well, you didn't call me that to get your news update.
I don't get all that new anyway. So if I didn't hear you, I don't hear it.
Yeah, exactly.
Shit, really?
Oh. Unless we forget that in 2012 was Benghazi in Libya. Benghazi, when, you know, Ambassador Stevens was killed at the embassy in Benghazi. That was September 11th, 2012.
Yeah. Okay. Callers, let's give it a go. I'm sure someone wants to talk to us. One person, please.
Someone want to talk?
I want to see
how it's going to work.
Yeah. Speaking of, now, I don't know if this is true.
Gossip?
I'm probably setting myself up for all sorts of accusations, but here you go. Apparently, Turnbull is part of my extended family. So,
and I did like Nick's response.
Mom, my grandmother. Yeah. My dad's grandmother, her maiden name is Turnbull, and all of her male relatives was still called Turnbull. And my cousin, who did some family history research, messaged me one day ages ago and said, "Oh, guess what? That friggin' idiot in Parliament is
He's our uncle or
distant, relative." So
it's okay. Like Nixon.
Yeah, he's the shallow end of the gene pool.
Shallow end of the gene pool. That's right. No worries.
Yeah.
No, so just like I said, this has been an insane fucking week. Energetically, it's been fucking insane. And like I said, multiple people that I've talked to are just like, what the fuck? And Nick went into town today, had to go do some stuff and go do some banking and crap, horrible shit. And he said everyone today was just like freaking out. Everywhere he went today, people were like freaking out, losing their shit. Like, yeah, not really all that surprising, actually.
The thing I'm noticing about people right now is here anyway, is everyone's sick. And I mean, ongoingly sick, one thing after another. It's been going on for about 6 weeks. And no one's really recovering before the next thing hits.
Yep.
I don't know whether it's weather related, because honestly, it can't decide whether it's winter, spring, or summer. No chance to decide. Whether everybody's bodies are just trying to adjust and keep up. Weird viruses that are taking people out for a week. Like bedridden for a week. And it's like everywhere you go. And I'm in amongst it all. I'm surrounded by people, and yet I'm not sick. I don't know whether that's what that means. I don't know. But I haven't been sick at all. I've had a couple of off days where I thought I was going that way, and then I'm good again. I don't get taken down or out. Nothing's getting a hold. So I don't know what to make of that, but it's weird. And it's everybody, kids, adults, the elderly, doesn't matter. Everybody. I know that we've been sick too. We've been sick. Not anything terrible, but just enough where you just continuously, like my nose, just refuses to unstuff itself. And if it does, it just starts running. There's no in between. And it's just random, But weather, strange fucking weather here. Holy shit. Sorry, I know this is a really strange conversation that we're having and we're jumping all over the place, and I do apologise. But can I go back to something? Because the closing of borders and the militarisation of borders, and you mentioned martial law, just reminded me that Cameron mentioned it too. He said, I think he didn't think it would happen for about 6 months. And he wasn't sure if it was going to be global. But he did see martial law, I think, at least in Europe and the US, but potentially global. Jeff can probably yay or nay that too. Because I'm trying to remember what he said would be the catalyst for it, and I can't remember. So if anybody in the chat room remembers what he said would be the catalyst.
I had a little bit of a hit today on the refugee situation. Nick brought up something news related that was kind of related but not related, and all of a sudden I had this oh, I'm gonna plug my computer in. Oh, I've done it again. I did this during Transfigures News too, where I forgot to plug my computer in. Hold on, give me a second. Hold on, maybe.
Well, the refugee situation is interesting. It does seem like a huge distraction on one hand.
Well, here's the thing. You've got multiple layers to it, right? It is a huge distraction because it's like turning Europe in and on itself. Everyone's using it to try and push their own agenda. They're using it as a serious divide piece, just like the whole, in the States, you have this Kim Davis fucking ridiculousness. It's got everyone all, blah, everyone screaming. I'm like, you don't get it, guys. This is another distraction. This is the next Cecil the Lion. It's a distraction. But with the refugees, in Europe, it's
a woman who's all about Mexico.
Sorry, say again. I couldn't hear you, hon. You
woman with the long blonde hair is talking.
No. Oh no, she's the one who works for well, basically the courthouse of
yeah.
And who would not give the marriage license to the gay couple because it was against her religion. And I mean, the memes have been fun. I had some fun with that last night at the very end of Transpicuous News because the memes have been fucking hysterical. I mean, seriously fucking hysterical. My favorite one is the picture of the Amish woman working at the DMV saying, "I will not give you a license for that devil vehicle," you know. Sorry, I thought it was funny. No, but the whole thing with the refugee thing, it's so multiple layered. And of course, now the news is playing ISIS is sending in the jihadists. The refugees are harboring all these jihadists and they're all flooding into Europe, right? Okay, and there was a whole group of pictures went out of like these guys who are like doing selfies as they're apparently just getting off the boat on the beach, and they're all like really, really buff young men. I'm like, okay, right, ISIS is sending the jihadis, terrorists into Europe. Okay, right, who runs ISIS? The Americans. And at least out of the 10 guys in the picture, there was at least 4 of them who looked like apple pie American. Seriously, all buff, skin tight t-shirts going, yeah, you look like some kind of starving, refugee. Guys, nice. And your iPhone taking a picture on a selfie stick. Yeah. No, the other thing that hit me, they're going to use this as a bioweapon scare. And the reason they're going to do it, the Syrian children have now been immunized 3 separate times since 2011 fully for polio. Live vaccine polio administration, not the one that they give in North America, the drops, which is the live polio vaccine. They have done 3 rounds since 2011 in Syria because they keep having polio outbreaks. Well, of course they do, because you keep vaccinating the children for polio. So of course you're having polio outbreaks. It's a live vaccine. We've had multiple articles come out, little articles about how they've just discovered this one guy in the UK was shedding live polio for 30 years from a vaccine he had as a child. And I was shocked when the article came out. I was like, holy shit, I can't believe they're actually publicly admitting this shit. And then, like I said, Nick was telling me another news story today, and it just triggered. And I went, they sent all these kids in who've all been massively vaccinated for polio. With the live vaccine, you can now release polio, which they've done in America. I've been covering on the news for like 10 months now, the polio-like virus that they have in America, which is way more virulent than the original polio. It is way worse than the original polio. And I think that that's going to be the next thing that they're going to try and do. Bring the virus in and start spreading the polio virus around. That'd be another good reason for martial law, wouldn't it? If all of a sudden you have a massive, massive polio outbreak. Oh, and then you can blame it on the children. The refugee children are bringing in polio. That'd work to their advantage. And we know they're already doing it. Like I said, they have the polio outbreak in America. And they've proven that what people don't understand is the polio that we saw 75, 100 years ago, 75% of people who had polio were asymptomatic. They didn't even have the sniffles. of the 25% who actually got sick, it was something ridiculous, like only 5% ever went to paralytic polio, where you saw like the children in iron lung machines and the crippled children, etc. It was like less than 5% ever even got that extreme. This new polio-like virus, though, is way different. Every single child that's gotten it has gone into the paralytic stage. Can you say mutated virus? Oh, and of course, then we have the articles that, the Pentagon sent live anthrax to all 50 states and 9 other countries. And now they've just come out and admitted on Friday that they've also lost a shipment somehow of live Black Plague virus has been shipped out, accidentally to several different places without proper notification.
Is that the one
that doesn't include the Ebola last year summer that they lost.
I mean, there's only so many times you get admit to losing shit like that before, somebody has to call incompetent. But
that's what I do.
They admitted to sending it out to something like 19 major laboratories, who then sent it to hundreds of minor laboratories, and the thing just got spread everywhere.
No. They've admitted that now that when they've gone and tracked through all their records, that live anthrax was sent to 50 states and 9 different countries, including Canada and Australia, by the way, and England. Canada, Australia, England, Germany, Japan, France. I can't remember which is the 7th country. I can't remember. I think it was Norway, actually, somewhere, something like that. So yeah, live anthrax, accidentally sent.
Do they ever explain why they're playing with live anthrax? I mean, to what?
Well, they have to study it, Lisa. If they don't study these things, how could they possibly plan to come up with the vaccine for it? And, to create a vaccine, you have to play with the live virus. Chick, don't even go there, because I'm telling you, every time the Black Plague one that was just admitted this week, I was just like, are you fucking kidding? And then I remembered the big story last December in England, how they have to move a huge a graveyard, a cemetery in England, because a new piece of land and they're developing it, and they have to move this cemetery. Oh, what is a cemetery full of? Black Plague victims. And all the scientists are all excited, because if they're exhuming all these bodies, they'll have a chance to actually study them and see all these studies about Black Plague and how it happened. Oh, and now just so happens that, the Pentagon has lost and Black Plague, live Black Plague. Oh, and also they've discovered a 30,000-year-old super virus frozen in Siberia, and they've decided they have to wake it up. Because apparently global warming is very scary, and global warming might wake up this virus. So we're going to wake it up anyways. And once again, I shit you not, I can't make this shit up.
Seriously, I do not fucking consent.
I do not consent. No, I don't consent.
Enough's enough. Game over. This is it. I'm calling time.
Okay.
I am done.
Foul. I call foul. Where's the yellow card, the pink card, the blue card, the orange card, the purple card?
They've all been carded. They're all off the field. No more.
Yeah. I do not fucking consent. This is just fucking asinineness. And it's just ridiculous. I'm sorry. Like, when I was putting together the news show this week, it was like, usually it flows. Like, when I'm putting the slides into the order they go in. This week, it was like I sat there for hours going, I don't even know where to start this week. I literally don't even know where to fucking start. And I didn't report on any of the small shit. it was like 1 hour of like, okay, we got some serious shit to go through. Here we go. Let's go hardcore. Never mind all the fucking Kim Davis stuff. Let's get into the real news. And I barely touched on the financial stuff, which is just insane. Like the financial market shit. Fucking Nikkei fell again this morning. And yet it jumped 7% last week. 7%. It's the biggest jump they've ever had in history. Because China said some nice things, and Prime Minister Abe said, yeah, don't worry about it. Our economy's great. So the Nikkei jumped 7% in one day.
Well, there you go. There's another thing that Cameron mentioned, which I completely agree with, is that World War III is already started.
Yeah. Oh, already. Well,
the US and China are at war, or the two factions that those countries represent.
Yep.
They haven't declared it yet because the world would just go up.
Hey, we have a caller.
Hello, caller. Who do we have?
Hey, can you hear me?
Hey, Blue.
I hate DW.
You kids, you were just so desperate for a caller, I couldn't resist.
Well, it's working. I'm really pleased.
Yeah, it sounds like it's working.
Nice.
Okay. All right, good. And I'm actually doing it. I'm calling on an iPhone from Skype, and I'm watching you on the computer.
Cool.
I love you women, and yes, I'm having the same experience with you. It's all over the place, this conversation.
Yeah, no, we're normally you get more, concise than this. That's just, I think we're representing just exactly how screwed up and all over the shop the planet is right now.
Yeah,
including the
I know. I know. I couldn't even grab a thread, but I thought, well, I'll at least call in and connect with you. But I do have a very serious question. Okay.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
Okay. And, and I love you and I love all of what we're doing. So I don't want you in any way to think this is like a personal attack, because it's not, but it's a question that is deep in me. All right. We talk often about what we give our attention to is what we're feeding. All right. Now, I am just as intrigued, and I follow you women as much as possible with all this amazing alternative reporting and collective imagining. But the question I'm asking my own self is, even reporting, although it's alternative and it's truth-telling, are we still feeding the subject? Look at your big grin.
Do you have a response for that one? Because I've had this discussion.
Me too.
Yeah.
One of my things is because it just keeps playing around in my head, is the whole new age meme that keeps coming out, and we don't realize there's these little pieces that we keep hanging on to, and we kind of go, oh, that whole new age religion stuff. But yet there's little pieces of it that we still hang on to. And I looked at that a few months ago and was just like, okay, is that one of those right along the same lines of like, well, you don't have to do anything. It's all done. No, don't give your attention to that. If you talk about the negative things, then you're paying attention to it. Therefore, you're paying your energy to it. Therefore, you're enlivening it. Well, I'm sorry, me, it's a crock of shit. Because I'm not paying energy into war, and I'm not paying energy, but I am showing it for what it is. And I think there's a really big difference between the concept of paying energy into something just by talking about it versus actually paying energy into it, i.e., giving it your value, giving it your all how do you say this, beyond energy, your actions, etc., because you're partaking in, etc. I think there's two very, very different things. And I think it's a very subtle trap when we look at and say that just talking about it is paying energy into it, because I don't agree so. I don't think it is.
My turn.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's hear you, Lisa.
I agree with that. Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
Well, Blue, you probably read these books when they came out. Did you ever read The Celestine Prophecy?
Yes, I have.
Love this.
Okay, well, in the Celestine Prophecy, it talks about naming things, naming behavior. Like if you're with somebody who's aggressive, you just say, why are you aggressive? Just name it in the moment. And it takes the energy out of it, and they actually they end up changing their behavior because you've named it. And they have to either admit they're being aggressive, for example, and continue to be aggressive, but at least openly, or change their behavior. And that's what I feel like we're doing with these, is that we're naming it. We're saying, I see you, I see the plan, I see what you're up to. We're naming it and taking the energy out of it. We're not doing an Alex Jones and going, oh my God, we're all going to hell in a handbasket, prep, get out, do it, and putting all of that emotional energy into it at all. I don't think we are.
I do.
Yes, I definitely agree. And I have followed that same train of thinking with you. And yet there's another layer. And let me just give you a little bit of information about where I have been putting my attention. I've been rereading ancient scriptures, all right? And I've been like going through it and looking for those grains of truth, and just really, and looking at Aldous Huxley. I've been absorbed with Brave New World, Revisited, Perennial Philosophy. So I've been like going back to some of our ancient texts. And there seems to be a permeating theme that I think we have some consensual agreement about. Everything says go within, and excuse the terminology, but the kingdom of God is within. Everything's directing us internally. And in my own practice, I get to this place where I go, wow, should I not be assessing this attention? Because I'm speaking to a layer after the fact that we all know just what you both spoke to is absolutely true. I couldn't agree more. But if we go more deeply, it's like if we are to put our attention internally, or even like what Lily shares, if we are to drop fully with the mother, and I sit in conversation with the mother, she doesn't give a flying fit about, what's going on. She's going, come to me, listen here. So, and then with iTech, everything's in. So that's what I'm pondering. It's like if we went to that place.
Yeah, but the problem is there has to be balance in all things. And it's like I talk continuously about the swinging of the pendulum. So you get right now everything is in that very masculine, patriarchal, and there's been this real new age push. Oh no, we've got to go over here to the divine feminine. And I've said, no. Mm-hmm. Those are the two extremes. You don't want the extremes. You want the balance point. And for me, when you look at the exact thing, if you were over here, i.e. Alex Jones, the fear porn, feed into it, the whole bit, you got to run with it, etc. But over here, there is that exclusion where if you can go so far within that you become, you can become isolated on the within. And there needs to be the balance point, because the thing is, we don't live here. And we don't want to live here. So we need to find the halfway point, because even though we're looking within, and we're always, this is one thing that we always talk about, you've got to go within for the answers, right? You got to see what resonates with you. You've got to find those places within you that tell you, yeah, I actually believe this. This sounds right to me when you're listening to anything or reading anything. But at the same time, we're here and we're on Earth and we are living on Earth. And what's going on around us affects us, not just in the physicality, but mentally and emotionally here as well. So if you swing to the other end of the pendulum where it's all about within, you're missing the point. Actually, I'm gonna give a quote. This is so awesome. My girlfriend Mushi has some friends who are Tibetan monks, and they used to come and stay at her guest house in Malta all the time. And these guys were, you know, they've been in India and for obviously most of their lives, since the fall of Tibet. And this one guy made some comment about the fact of like, I can sit in meditation for 24 hours straight and be in that place of within in nirvana and 24 hours. And she was like, okay, but that's great, except that you're here on Earth. So if you're going all the way over here and spending all your within here, you're missing the point, because you're here on Earth to experience. So there has to be the balance point. 24 hours in meditation, or, you know, you can be like, you know, over here with, you know, Alex Jones. But there still has to be this balance point, because regardless of where we want to be, we're all right here right now. And we're all in this experience.
Can I also say
yes,
something?
and yes, please.
Jeff just brought this up in the chat room too about it's when some of this news first hits the mainstream media, it's designed to put people into fear and panic. So if we can discuss it on these shows and see how it fits in with other pieces of it, and see what role it's playing. I mean, when things are isolated as an event in and of themselves, they can be very fearful. But when we can kind of break it apart and dissect it and see that, oh, well, it actually fits into that and it's part of that plan. Oh, look, see where all the dots connect. And we don't react, then it has no effect on it. It's the reacting part that is paramount to us feeding it. It's reacting. If we can stay in what Steve Richards calls 0 point and stay in that place of center and not react, then we're not feeding it. Yep. It requires our reaction. It requires an investment from us. Yep. And the only investment any of these shows get out of me is I do not consent. So time out or on a call or give them the finger. So
yes, I agree with what you're saying, and I recognize that, and I am present with you, and I too take in that information with that understanding. But I'm grateful to each of you for having the conversation, because I think we make I know myself, I make a big assumption that others are in fact digesting it in this way. I'm sorry, did I talk over you?
No.
Oh, okay.
You can keep talking.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, and I too, I come back to that place, and it's like, I like having the information. I love also being able to share it with others. And I impart that similar understanding, you know, always finding that balance, you know, not reacting. I guess I wanted to entertain this conversation with you, just so we could both try out calling in.
Appreciate that very much.
Exactly.
It's good to hear your voice.
Good conversation.
Thank you. I'm with you, and I'm just getting my internet sorted out here. It's taking forever, but pretty soon I'll be able to get back on track and watch you as much as I do. I am so grateful. I think you women are awesome. I love everything you're doing, And I miss you. I miss you a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, me too, Dawn. Exactly.
All right. Well, next time.
Now, thank you for calling in.
Yeah.
Yes, you're welcome. All right. Have fun. I'll see you soon.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have actually received a fair bit of flack, I know, for even having these shows and talking about the stuff that we do. But and seeking the balance for me was about the collective imagination show too. So I've got that as a okay, now it's time for me to be creative and actually put my energy into what I want. So I have that balance. And
Well,
I think a lot of the people. Sorry,
we've said it so many times, and you said it just now. You take the energy out of shit. And I've gotten a lot of, in the last week, an amazing amount of people who contacted me literally freaking out about what's going on in the States, what's going on here, what's going on there. And they're coming to me because they know I'm following all the news and saying, what the hell is happening? Like, what the hell? And when you can talk to people and you can explain what's happening, it takes the fear out. Because then you can make a decision, right? For each person can only make the decision that they can make for themselves or with their families, etc. And if shit is getting real as far as, like stuff going on in the States, then you make a decision but now you have making an informed decision because you know what's going on. It's the same thing with
I'm going to change
vaccines or anything.
Completely.
What?
Completely.
What?
I'm going to change the subject again completely.
I go. Change the subject.
Our conversation over the last couple of weeks is timeline. The whole timeline discussion, right? And the Mandela effect. Mandela, not Mandela. Yeah, more emails, more messages, more stories from people over the last week too about their experiences. And funnily, I've even been contacted by people who don't watch my shows. They have no idea what I've been talking about. And saying, do you know the book, The Bernstein Bears? Or was it Sex and the City or something, right?
Yeah.
And
it's full circle. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. And Linda, who listens to this show, sent us a message of a stack of the Bernstein books. And they are Bernstein books. Not Bernstein or Berenstain or whatever it is. And I was talking to someone the other day who said, it's definitely Bernstein. I've got the books. I read them to my child. And he went to go and get one and couldn't find it. He said, that is trippy. I know these books are in the house. I read them. I read it last night. You couldn't find it. It just disappeared.
I got an email today from someone who I chat with email a lot, saying the whole interview with a vampire versus interview with the vampire. And he basically called up his brother and said, okay, what is it? And the guy was like, it's interview with a vampire. A vampire. Of course it is. Don't be ridiculous. And he went and got his book, which was 20 years old. And it says interview with the vampire. And they both went, no, that's not what it is. And they both like, what the hell? That's not what it is. So, yeah. There's been a lot of those messages.
And people's personal stories of when they think they may have actually jumped timelines.
Mm-hmm.
And some people have got multiple stories to tell.
Yep.
Being in cars where they should have been killed in an accident.
Mm-hmm.
Something they were sure hit them or was about to hit them, and then suddenly they're on the other side of that, and nothing happened.
Yep.
That's a common one. I'm getting that a lot with car accidents. Yep. Or what was the other one? There was one unique one about literally waking up one day and the house is different. It's the same house, but the decor is different. And there's little changes. And people that she knew are no longer around. Another one where a woman was with a guy for 2 years, loved him desperately, and spent 6 months trying to break up with the guy, but kept going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. She just couldn't fully separate from him. Woke up one day and it was as if he never existed. And he doesn't for her. They live in a small town. Other people see him and run into him all the time. She hasn't laid eyes on him once. And emotionally, it's like he never existed and the relationship never happened. And it was like that. I'm getting all of these little stories. And and the dead rising. People who swear they know somebody who died.
Yep.
Facebook will tell them they're dead. But they've seen them. They've spoken to them. They've had messages from them. Or the history that they know where they died is not there anymore. They're actually alive and well, and they've been able to look them up and they've always been there. Yep.
Here's another one, and this is where I've actually experienced this a couple of times, where people that I know, people who were like really good friends, have all of a sudden done radical changes. Like almost like one of those overnight things. And I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure I don't have that many friends that are bipolar, but I've had this a couple of times happen where you have someone who you've known for a really long time. And then all of a sudden it's like something just flips and you're like, who are you? I don't even know who you are. And I thought about that last week and was just like, is that a symptom of something again where it's not necessarily that at that moment I've changed timelines, that maybe they have changed timelines, and now it's a different them, a different, we go into the whole conversation of fractals, etc. Is it a different fractal of them who comes in who just happens to be a bitch?
I want to ask this to the people in the chat room. Have you got anybody in your life that kind of just changed overnight? They don't feel like the same person? Because I'm seeing a couple of those in my life. And they don't feel the same, they don't act the same to me, the same, they don't treat the same, they don't even freaking look the same. And it was sudden, a sudden shift.
Yep. You and I've discussed this several times, haven't we? People that we know who've all of a sudden just gone click, and you're just like, what the hell happened there?
Miller in the chat room is saying that when she listened to last week's show, she went and had a look at the DVD of Sex and the City, and it said "and." I mean, if the physical evidence has changed, what does that mean? It means you've jumped timelines, I guess.
You've jumped timelines then.
But so where does that photograph come from of all the books that say Bernstein?
Well, I don't know. Maybe she brought them with her. They were in her handbag. I don't know. It's one of those things where you look at all this stuff and it's like, for me, I just keep going back to the whole universal donor and the blood stuff, because this is one of those ones that is so foundational. Like, this is not something you can fuck with. And people who are medical professionals don't just forget or get confused or you think it just doesn't happen that way. It's the one hardcore question to me. But now I'm looking back at a lot of different shit coming out. And I'm starting to look at some of the articles, for example, Second World War, because I brought up, someone posted something on Facebook, and it was a news article about Hitler. From kind of an article about Hitler back in the time type thing. And I reposted it out on Facebook, and I said, look, I don't know anything about this. All you knowledgeable people out there, because I know I have so many of them, if you guys have information on this, can you please send it to me? Give me some links, whatever, because I obviously, because whatever the stuff basically was saying that Hitler was actually fighting against the Zionist bankers, and he would not let the bankers into Germany, which is why it all started in the first place, because he was taking down the Zionist bankers because he wouldn't allow them to come in. And since that point, and I got a bunch of people sent me videos, and one is a 6-hour video, and I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, the video you're talking about,
have to watch it.
The Greatest Story Never Told.
The Greatest Story Never Told, exactly.
It's a really interesting take on Hitler and what actually World War I and World War II were really all about. And the guy who made it does back it up with newspapers of the day, documents, the whole bit. And he says that Hitler was not anti-Jew, that he actually had Jews in his army. He had whole regiments that were well looked after. There are people who were in the concentration camps who came out and said they were just showers. They were delicing treatments. They were not gas chambers.
Well, someone sent me the one article that says it's a news piece saying that the one big, and it wasn't Auschwitz, but it was one of the other big concentration camps, that it was like 46,000 people died after the Allied forces took over the concentration camp. After, and it's well documented. So it wasn't that they were killed in gas chambers or anything else. 45,000 people who were in that concentration camp died from starvation and typhoid, which was from the lice that they had the lice. And that's what the same thing they said. The reason they all had their heads shaved in the concentration camp wasn't like it was their heads were shaved because the lice were so rampant they couldn't. And that's it. The Allied forces cut off the food supply. So there's a whole lot of things. Well, I just got sent another article. This just was published yesterday or today, talking about the Vatican and basically saying everything that you see played out in the Second World War was actually done by the Vatican. And no, I haven't had a chance to read. It's a long article. I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing. But then we have other pieces of history, like I've talked about before. We've had in government, high-ranking government officials giving different versions of history. And we have things, Nick had one article come out and he went through and was looking at it. There's a guy who I think it's actually this week or next week is giving a conference, and he has proven completely and totally that Jesus Christ never existed. And he has spent like all these years, and he says he's so confident he challenges anyone to question him. Open mic, anyone, you can question him on anything. Open mic. And the same thing, this guy's got really document. Sorry?
We've only got a couple of minutes left, and I just wanted to make a comment on the Nazi Germany thing before we do move on completely. The photographs that were shown and that are supposedly the Jewish population who were killed in these concentration camps or mass graves and all of that sort of thing. This guy demonstrates that those photographs are actually Germans who were being murdered. I think it was in Russia before the war. May not have been Russia, don't quote me on that, I can't remember. But by another country, which is what started the war, was them saying, you can't keep doing this to the German people. And that's where those photographs come from. And I think he's able to prove that. And it's been a couple of years since I saw this series. And there was 2 versions of that too, which was funny. I found them on, I found a series on YouTube, and then when I tracked down the original website, there was a different edit. And the first version that I saw was better, but I couldn't find it again. The edited version that was on the official version on the website didn't go into as much detail or in as good a chronological order as the one that I saw. Because I went to share it and I couldn't find the original. I found that and then it was like, oh shit, that's not as good. So if you haven't seen it, and if you're interested in the subject matter, go and check it out, because it does bring up a lot of questions about what we're told about the war, about Nazis, about the Jewish Holocaust. Again, it's that whole rewriting of history. And if Hitler was in fact someone who understood who the bankers were and what they were really doing, then vilifying him as the biggest monster in our recent history.
We've got a caller with
works.
like 1 minute left.
Do we have another caller?
I know. We've got like 2 minutes.
Who do we have? Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
It's Lisa Gentry. How are you?
Oh, Lisa, how are you doing?
I'm good. It took me a minute to try to get through, and I wanted to call real quick because I just had an epiphany when I was listening to you guys, because when you were talking about timeline jumping, do you have like an extra minute to hear it?
Yeah.
We've got about a minute, I think.
1 minute.
All right, well, I'll hurry up. Well, when my daughter was in college a few years ago, my stepmom and my dad and we drove up 2 hours to have dinner with her, and on our way home late at night, I was driving and my stepmom was in the passenger seat and my dad was asleep in the back seat. And we're driving down a really dark road late at night. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, it felt like we were flying through the air. And it was just this incredible experience. And then we came out on the other side, and my stepmom and I looked at each other and we were like, what the fuck was that? Did we fly through the air? And we just stared at each other. We were just freaking out, staring at each other. Well, we went for about 5 miles and we had to turn around because we needed to go back to see what was happening. So we turned around and we went back, and the entire expressway from one side to the other was loaded with cars that had crashed and were on fire. And I mean, the entire area was just covered with all of those automobiles on fire. And now, after hearing you guys tonight, I feel like there's the possibility that we did a timeline jump and we jumped over all of that was going on, and we came out on the other side, and it just felt like we were flying through the air when that happened, because we knew it was just an incredible experience, but we didn't know what until we went back. So I can't wait to call her and tell her, because I think that's what happened, and I wanted to call and share it.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
You're welcome. I've been wondering this for like 5 years. We frequently will talk about this. We'll be like, do you remember that time that we just felt like we were flying through the air and we didn't experience, we didn't know what was going on. And, my stepmom, she's a religious person. So of course she was like, oh yeah, it was the angels. It was the angels that picked us up. But in my mind, I'm out there on another realm. So I was like, no, there is something else going on. And I just haven't figured it out yet. That wasn't what it was. And I figured it out tonight. It was a timeline jump.
Well, glad you joined us on this timeline, darling.
Absolutely.
I am too. It's a really nice show. I love all these shows. I love them so much. And real quick again, before we go, it just resonates with me so much that we all share these things and talk about these things, because, if we're afraid to walk into the dark, then, and we don't see what's there, then, you know, there's always that fear there of the dark is there, what's there. But when we step into that dark and we go there, there's gems there, and that gems of knowledge there. And when we know what's happening, then when all these other people that are so shocked and surprised about it or things like that, then we don't react to it because we understand it and we have the knowledge and we know what's going on. So that resonates with me so much, and I'm so glad that we have these talks every week and we go there about everything that's going on, no matter what it is, and how perceived darkness or anything, it just feels like that's where we are supposed to go. So I appreciate these talks where we do this, and we'll find gems there.
Thanks, Donna. I agree.
Thank
And
you.
they can only get away with any of it if we're ignorant.
Exactly.
And we've been ignorant long enough, I think.
Absolutely.
Right.
And you know what?
You,
this is what comes to me. This is what comes to me real quick. If we put our head in the sand and we pretend like nothing is happening or that we don't know, or when we pretend like there is not an out there, because there is an out there, and it's some bullshit sometimes. So if we put our head in the sand and we pretend like it's not happening, to me, that feels like service to self. It doesn't feel like service to others. So I'm not going to put my head in the sand. I'm going to keep my head up and alert and aware, and I'm going to know what's going on. And I know you guys are doing that too. And we're all in this together. And I love you guys.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Love you too.
Hey, guys. Awesome. May you be blessed in every way. Bye.
Thank you. All right, we've really hit our time limit.
Yeah,
so
we're actually over time now.
Following this on this crazy conversation this week, it's been all over the shop. Like, no.
Let's face it, Lisa, it's nothing new. Really, that's not really new. I'm sorry, guys, that apparently Duncan couldn't find any internet.
More than normal.
Yes, true.
And Randy's MIA, so maybe next.
I will get the two of them, and we will have this conversation later on.
Okay. Bye for now, and see you tomorrow for Collective Imagination.
Bye, everyone.
If you really had to make a difference on a large scale with minimal resources, how would you go about it? Have you ever dared to dream of doing that which seems impossible? On a planet steeped with corruption and destruction, the question beckons, how do we change it? Media has a far-reaching impact on people and has been used to manipulate humanity into our current destructive patterns. In order to affect people into moving into constructive patterns of behavior, we need to construct a new paradigm of media. Conscious Consumer Network has been created with the explicit intention of giving the amazing truth-seeking, solutions-orientated, alternative media a place to fully realize their true potential with a cutting-edge, high-tech professional media platform. In turn, some of the greatest freedom-seeking hearts and souls of our time have realized the true potential of what has been created and have come together to provide their insight and inspiration on CCN. Conscious Consumer Network has become a unique, interactive information and educational network which provides a free-to-view, live-stream, ultra-high-definition channel to the world and features 25 live shows a week and growing with the addition of multiple language broadcasts. CCN has features comparable with mainstream media, such as being able to pause and rewind broadcasts whilst being live streamed. Catch up on missed or previous broadcasts, now available from CCN High Definition downloads. You can now purchase a high definition download of your favorite CCN show from ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a monthly pledger. This can be done with a monthly pledge of €10, which will allow you unlimited access to CCN's high definition downloads, which hosts a back catalogue of over 250 shows which have been aired since the launch of CCN on the 1st of January 2015. In order to keep CCN on the air, public funding is needed. Please donate to CCN's Network Support Fund or become a monthly pledger. Help keep alternative media in the hands of the people. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.